Hello out there, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about this crazy documentary called Pumping Iron. It's basically about a Mr. Olympia contest that Arnold featured in, I believe it was I want to say 77, here it is. And he is prominently featured in the documentary. It's not totally about him, it's basically just about the bodybuilding world. And it really shines, as this blurb says, a fascinating light on a subculture that, of course, has evolved over the years, and now it's just gotten so absurd. I mean, the bodybuilders of today just look, inhuman practically, with big distended bellies, and I'm not exactly sure what the whole point of the professional bodybuilding circuit is at this stage. I mean, there's no denying, I think it goes without saying, the commitment that these individuals put themselves through to carve out the bodies that they think are going to win them acclaim and bodybuilding contest. I mean, it's a incredible sacrifice, and it's something that is really something to marvel at. Even if you don't necessarily understand it, you can certainly appreciate the effort that goes into that kind of commitment. But in any case, this bodybuilder documentary, it focuses, I would say, largely on Schwarzenegger, who at that time was, I think, 28. Lou Ferrigno is in it, Mike Katz, Serge Nubret, Franco Colombo. It's a veritable who's who of the 70s bodybuilding scene, and it's truly just a fascinating window into that world. And of course, Arnold, as a kid, I was always enamored, especially when I first saw Conan, with just how physically impressive he was. I mean, I thought to myself, as someone who often, would get sand kicked in his face, it was a skinny kid, that, wow, if only I, had basically a physique like that, people would leave me the hell alone. And I think that, certainly in the 70s and 80s, there was a large emphasis on just physicality within, the male psyche and not being pushed around. I personally think that what's really interesting about Arnold is that he has evolved over the years as someone who went from being, sort of a naive, though incredibly focused, obviously very hedonistic and self-centered person, to someone who I think is becoming practically a Renaissance man. He's shown remarkable contrition and ability to reflect upon his mistakes and appreciate, how all of that has brought him to here, but at the same time recognizing the mistakes, and some of them very significant mistakes he's made over the years. He's not someone who is afraid to look in a mirror and see everything about himself, warts and all, and recognize when he's messed up. I've find that very impressive. For those who say you can't teach a dog an old dog new tricks, rather, I think Arnold is a nice counterexample to that, because obviously he's done some pretty reprehensible things, but instead of being just defensive and flippant about it, he flat out says, I made a terrible mistake and I'm paying for it every day. Next question. I respect that about him quite a bit. I also think he's an interesting person from the standpoint of demonstrating that you can be sort of fiscally conservative and ideally for some force many of the principles of sort of smaller government, but at the same time recognizing the importance of a clean environment and public health system and infrastructure and so forth. I think his views actually represent many Americans, and he's socially pretty tolerant as well, although early on in his gubernatorial career he made some missteps, which again he's come out and said later how those were political mistakes that he's made. I just find this guy infinitely fascinating. Huge fan of his films, and this movie is just a terrific look inside the young Arnold Schwarzenegger. And of course, this is your standard def DVD. I'm not sure that you need high def 4K HD for this. I think the grain and sort of somewhat crude VHS-like look of the film suits the subject matter and the time period that it was captured. So I would just advise anyone out there who is into Arnie or has some passing fascination with the types of people that would be willing to spend their entire lives, or at least younger lives, committed to building the perfect body, and what kind of sort of mania that might reflect. Look no further than Pumping Iron. It's a terrific documentary, and one that I think again is just an interesting window into that era, and also into one of our more interesting cults of personality / celebrities in these times. So on that note, take care out there, everyone. Stay safe, be kind, and keep watching cinema.